Coming up next on This Week in Computer Hardware, we get the final Oculus Rift design revealed to us. We have our final AMD Radeon R9 300 series rumors, and we show you a 40-inch 4K monitor. It's all coming up next on TWiCH.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiCH.
Bandwidth for TWiCH is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is TWiCH, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 319, recorded June 11th, 2015. Why you need a 40-inch monitor. This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by Credit Karma. With Credit Karma, you can find out your credit score, get tips and suggestions on managing your credit, and monitor your credit for free. Visit creditkarma.com and don't forget to download their app. Just text TWIT to 89800 to get started right away. And by Braintree. If you're working on a mobile app and searching for the right payments API, check out the Braintree V.0 SDK. With one simple integration, you get every way to pay. To learn more and try out the sandbox, go to braintreepayments.com/TWiCH. Hey everybody, welcome to This Week in Computer Hardware, TWiCH's weekly show that obviously, as the name would imply, focuses on the world of computer hardware. Today, the part of Patrick Norton will once again be played by understudy Allyn Malventano. I hope you've been studying your lines over the last 7 days.
I have not got my Patrick Norton impression down yet.
No. We don't want you to try to do an impression of the primary. You know, you just go in, you fill in the lines, and you just try. We try to get through. Get through the week. Patrick is off. Had some other family stuff creep up, so Alan's gonna step in for us again here. But that doesn't stop anything. We still have a bunch of news to talk about. We still have a bunch of hardware things that occurred over the past week. We're going to start with, before I'll tease what we're going to talk about in the rest of the episode. We've got a giant monitor review. We've got a gaming notebook that's enormous, two giant things. Yep. We're also going to talk about Oculus. They had their press conference today. Kind of the beginnings of E3 start today, which is crazy because it's Thursday and E3 doesn't really start until next Tuesday.
It's kind of like CES.
Yeah, the press conferences start early. So this wasn't even held in LA. Whatever. We'll get to it when we get there. But let's start with the a giant monitor. This is a Seiki Pro SM. I've always got to look at this model number. SM40UNP. Bring up the screen. It's a 40-inch 4K desktop display. So it's not a TV. A lot of people, you see 40 inches to a display, you think this is a TV that somebody uses as a monitor.
Even I still think it's a TV.
It's not though.
And it's been sitting on my desk for a few days now.
I mean, I guess it's kind of a blurred line there. What is the difference between a TV and a monitor at this point?
That's true.
And it's really more connectivity, I guess. It doesn't have a tuner of some kind.
Yeah,
this doesn't have a tuner.
There's no smart TV interface.
Display.
There's no remote control. None of that stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
It doesn't have a glossy face to it like your typical television. It has a little bit kind of a matte kind of a finish to it.
Instead, it is just an enormous monitor.
Yeah, that picture, the picture on the stream, you really can't, there's nothing to give you perspective. And there might not even be that many good pictures in our review that we could kind of give it good perspective because it's enormous.
There's one picture on the second page, the first picture, I believe, on the second page that looks at the physical design, where if you go look at it, you look at the picture, you just see two monitors sitting on the ground.
Yep.
And the one on the left is the Seiki 40-inch, and the one on the right is actually a 32-inch 4K display, right?
PQ321Q.
If you look, if somebody were to just say, hey, what are these monitors? I'd say, well, somebody upgraded from like a 22-inch to a 27-inch TV. And it's a very similar thing going from now, what we've actually gone through on the right is a 32 up to a 40.
Yeah.
Other than the size, though, what are the kind of specifications that that stand out, I guess?
So it's a super MVA panel, which means you're going to get good color reproduction out of it, that sort of stuff. You know, much better than TN.
Right.
Much more TV-like, kind of like television-like kind of a panel, right?
Yeah.
Has a whole bunch of inputs. You have a couple of DisplayPort 1.2. You have a couple of HDMIs, but they are not HDMI 2, so you cannot do full 4K 60 hertz from the HDMI ports, at least on this particular panel. Has dual link DVI, has VGA, which kind of surprised to see that, but it works very well on this panel. and there's a built-in USB hub, similar to many other desktop displays. And that
so only the DisplayPort connections will do 60 hertz.
Only
but
the DisplayPort
1.2, so you don't have any like MST issues. Or
no, it doesn't have to make up the screen out of 2 virtual screens or anything like that. Yeah, it's just straight 4K 60 devices, but it shows up as. Yeah, so there's that. It's very low latency. No noticeable latency in our.
It's a Seiki Pro brand, which indicates in some capacity that it's supposed to be meant for a higher end user. I don't want to say a professional user, because when Seiki came to us with this, they were like, hey, we want to see what gamers will see out of this. Right. So it's definitely multifaceted in its use that it can have. So the Pro is more about quality of screen, would be what I would kind of imply.
Yeah, it is a very good quality screen. We'll give it that. It's not an IPS display. It is a technology that falls between TN and IPS.
I think it's closer to IPS than it is TN.
I would agree.
In terms of what you get viewing angle wise and color reproduction and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. The color reproduction, I'll qualify that and say when calibrated.
Sure.
Because the display does not come calibrated from the factory, unlike some other series that also are called Pro for a professional series. So the name is a little bit misleading there as far as dubbing it a Pro series display. But once we calibrate it, which it's for those familiar with that process, pretty easy, as long as you have the necessary hardware to stick in front of the display and let it run for a couple hours.
Right.
But once it's calibrated, you get very good, rich colors, really deep blacks. What they're showing on the stream now on video is other features of this display, which are actually pretty cool, is that out of all those inputs, you can actually have those inputs all going to the display at the same time. You can even do a quad-tiled display.
Which I've seen on other displays, but because this is a 40-inch monitor, each one of those 4 displays is technically a 20-inch monitor.
Right.
So you have 4 20-inch up. You could actually, one of the neat things is you can actually send each of those a 4K signal if you want, and it scales it. The internal scaler handles all that.
You could.
But it makes more sense if you're sending it 41080p displays, and it could be from one machine or from 4 different machines if you want to do that, which is a neat feature. I don't think. I think it would be. I think like a 2-way configuration, like horizontally, would maybe be more interesting.
Yes, I noticed that when you put this one in 2-way, it puts them side by side.
Yeah, and you're doing it's still 16:9 aspect ratio.
Yeah, so you're losing a lot of screen. You're basically losing half the screen worth of real estate, to just black space. Another thing about the size and the resolution, I think this is the perfect size for 4K.
Why is that?
Just because of pixel pitch, because of how relatively larger the pixels are. If you see something like a 28 or even a 24-inch 4K display. So
the 28-inch 4K is what's most popular now, right? That's like the first 4K panels that were like low cost.
Yes.
Were coming out at 28 inches.
Yeah.
And the immediate complaint was everything is too small.
It is. It is.
And you got to turn on window scaling, which is not perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
If you compare that to like I used to use well, actually I still have one at home, 30-inch Dell 25 by 16 display, right?
Yep.
And the pixel pitch of that is actually very close to this display, except this display is full 4K, right? It's because, you're adding a lot of pixels, but you're also adding a lot of space, like a lot of actual inches diagonal to the display. So you get everything stretched out more, and you can run Windows comfortably without any scaling on this panel. You can read everything just fine. It is a little bit smaller of a pitch than you would get on maybe some other panel that you might have used, but it's not so much so that you're just like, oh, I can't read this. I really just have to turn on some scaling.
You can use this monitor in a typical monitor placement, like in terms of distance from your face, with 4K without having to use scaling.
Exactly.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it is.
I think that's interesting. And price-wise, this is what, $1,000?
It is at $1,000 even.
$999.
$999.
I mean, that's not cheap in terms of monitors today, but it doesn't seem outrageous.
Not cheap. Right.
It doesn't seem outrageous. The PQ321, which is the 32-inch ASUS that we had on that floor image that we were doing for comparison, is still like $1,200.
I think it's a little more than that.
$1,300, something like that. Yeah, it's still up there.
But that panel was like, wasn't it like $3,000 when it came out?
Started at $2,800, I think.
Yeah, that was a lot of money, and this is brand new, just hit the market, $1,000, and it's really just the sheer size of it is what gets you. Right. When you start comparing it to other displays, and you might see displays with you know, deeper color gamuts or, you know, more calibrated from the factory or all these other features. But then you look at that spec that says the size and it's like a 28-inch or it's a 32-inch. This is 40. I mean, it's just such a huge, just monstrosity just sitting on your desk. It's like, you know, it took me a while to get used to just putting stuff, you know, before if you had a 30-inch display, you might put something up in the corner, get it out of the way, and then, you know, have a video playing up in the corner and then work on, you know, document your typing or something like that. And you still kind of see it. It's almost like as if the television was off in the distance, right?
Right.
The first time you do that on this and just move something up in the corner, you almost immediately realize you can't see it anymore when you're looking at something else somewhere else on the screen. It's just too far over, right? It's just like, yeah, it's basically as if you had two very large displays on your desk, except there's no bezel in the middle. It's just one huge piece of glass in front of you.
Huh.
Yeah.
Allyn has a full review up at PCPro.com. Also of note, if you're interested in that monitor, you might go to PCPro.com and look for a contest that we're running as well with Seiki. We're actually giving away 2 of these monitors.
To
2 different people, not 2 to 1 person. So that would be an interesting desktop to see as well. So 2 of those we're going to give away, so you can go figure out how to sign up for that. It's fairly easy to do. Maury posted a review of an ASUS Z97-Pro gamer motherboard. This is interesting. Usually when you see a gamer branded component, it tends to be more expensive.
Generally, yeah.
Right? It tends to have maybe some stuff on it that seems weird, out of place. It doesn't, like in my mind, a gamer product is something that is, I want best performance per dollar. And I want it to have all the things I need, but I don't want it to have a whole bunch of stuff that I just maybe want or don't want.
Right. Usually the bare bones ones are more of a value kind of a product name, where we would want them to be gamer, but they don't end up that way.
So this motherboard, they were showing some pictures of it. It has a black and red kind of color scheme to it, which is more, you know, it's not kind of the ASUS Z97 lineup so far has been black and gold. I believe, which is more of a gold color, you know, which looks nice, looks classy. This is more aggressive in its styling, but it's just a hint of red, right? It's not kind of all in your face, but it has a lot of the features that you're going to want as a gamer, and maybe some stuff that you might otherwise not is kind of missing. Right. So you only have 1 SATA Express port. You only have 4 internal SATA ports plus the 2 included in the SATA Express. So you still have access to 6 there. But you don't need 10 or 12.
Right.
You just that's not a thing.
Yeah, you're just gaming. You don't need a RAID full of hard drives connected to your gaming motherboard.
On the back panel, you've got 4 USB 3.0 ports instead of like 8. You've got 1 gigabit Ethernet port instead of 2.
Well, you don't really need to if you're gaming.
You've got analog audio output. There's a digital audio out there. You got HDMI, DVI, and VGA. You probably don't need that because you're going to use a discrete graphics card.
Sure, but you know, I mean, that's something that probably, you know, does come on some of the CPUs. Right. So you might as well just.
They all have or almost all of them have GPUs on. And then you also have, you know, other features like the headphone amplifier support. The red line shielding, which is basically that they have separated the audio lines on the PCB from everything else to kind of reduce noise. You know, those Supreme FX, those are features that you want if you're using the analog audio. Right. That's all fantastic stuff. It'll do overclocking. This is one of the secrets of ASUS Z97 motherboards is that they all overclock essentially identical no matter where they are in the product family because they all share the same like power delivery design. Almost exactly. Yeah. Right. And so you still have support for 2A SLI here. You've got your primary and your secondary there. You actually have 2 PCI slots.
Those are PCI slots.
You got regular PCI, not PCIe, not PCI Express, PCI slots. If you have a legacy audio card that you want to use, that's an option.
I mean, I still have a Zonar like PCI.
Do you?
Yeah. So I still use it.
There are still people there, but a lot of motherboards that come out now just don't include them.
Yeah.
So that option is there. If you actually populate both the graphics card slots, though, you will not be able to use those PCI slots.
That's true.
But, you know, there's got to be sacrifices made everywhere. But it is a Z97 chipset, so it does support Haswell. It's going to support all your highest end Intel Haswell processors, quad core, 8-thread, all that type of stuff. Performance, fantastic. The included software that ASUS includes is still great. Like you still get the same AI suite of software that includes, you know, your fan expert control software, your overclocking software, the stuff that actually works really well.
Yeah, you can adjust. You can
inside the system
tweak your overclock like within Windows. You don't have to keep going to the BIOS.
You can do like. I actually still am impressed by their auto overclocking stuff where you say, hey, go auto overclock and I want you to be this aggressive.
Yeah.
Right. And it'll sit there and it takes time because it's doing what you would do normally by hand, but it's doing it in software. If it crashes, it reboots, it goes back a step, starts, does something else.
Yeah.
That still works impressively well. It looks like Maury was able to get up to, with his processor, like 4.7 gigahertz through that automated software.
Wow. Usually that's a manual.
Yeah.
Overclock
So it did well. But I think the best part about this is really going to be in the price. It is what do I want to make sure I get this right? It's $150 on Newegg as of today.
Really?
Yeah.
For a Z97 motherboard?
I think that's including a $20 rebate, I think. So maybe it's like 180 before it or 160 before it, something like that.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that's good.
Considering how expensive some of the motherboards we talk about on this show.
Well, it's probably because they, got rid of all those extra things that you don't necessarily need if you're just a gamer.
Yep.
Right.
So Maury, for example, lists onboard buttons, debug LEDs, overclocking friendly jumpers, voltage measuring points as the type of things they left off of this board to save space, save money, and get a board out there. And I think this is the type of motherboard that most of the people listening to this show want to buy.
Honestly, if you're
not
just
the $400.
Yeah, I mean, just typical kind of regular gamer person is most likely not going to be doing the whole jumpers and connecting voltmeters to the motherboard and to get just this last possible couple of % out of the overclock. They're just going to go through the GUI stuff. They're just going to they're just going to tweak it, get it reasonably fast. Okay, I kind of push the hardware a little bit. I'm satisfied. You get it stable, and then you go back to your gaming, right?
Yeah. Indeed. So that's the Z97-Pro gamer motherboard. Another thing from ASUS to talk about real quick, Steve posted a review of the G751 notebook. This is a giant gaming notebook. Actually, I had it in the office, but it's sitting over there somewhere. You'll be able to tell. This is a high-end quad-core Haswell Core i7-4710 HQ system, GTX 970M graphics, 16 gigs of memory on this, although it does include a 1 terabyte spinning hard drive, so no SSD, which is a little bit of a letdown.
Yeah,
you can configure this with SSDs in addition to.
Is there room? Like, could you upgrade after the fact?
You could, yeah. Okay, you could do that yourself if you want to put an M.2.
Okay, so it has an M.2 port. Yeah, you can just.
Yeah, it's a 17.3-inch screen, so it's one of those massive gaming laptops, 1080p, anti-glare IPS. What this is not, though, I want to be sure people realize if they go read this, this is not the G-Sync derivative of the G751 that was just announced last week at Computex. We have one of those in, we'll have a review up. But as far as I can tell, and from what I've been told, both versions of this laptop will be sold. The G-Sync one will be slightly more expensive because it's using different panel technology,
yeah.
Right? So this notebook is still going to be around, and in this configuration, it's $1,500. Actually, so maybe it's just 2.5-inch. No, it looks like an M.2 slot there, doesn't it? There's room to expand in terms of 2.5-inch drives as well. You've got Thunderbolt support in here. There's all kinds of stuff. It is a full-size keyboard with the 10 key or the number pad, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, it must just be a beast.
Steve liked the trackpad. It's got dedicated buttons. Performance-wise, fantastic. Battery life, not as you would expect.
Well, battery life on a gaming laptop is really just a UPS.
It's kind of sad when you see a gaming laptop and you like take out the battery and you go, oh,
it's tiny.
Sometimes it's smaller than what you get on like Ultrabooks. Yeah, that are running significantly less impressive hardware. Battery life wise, well, though, you're kind of looking in like the couple of hour range.
86 minutes in one test there, and then
yeah. Yeah, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. So it looks like he got on the reader test. He got 3 hours and 50 minutes on the reader test, and then the classic test, which is more stressful, was like an hour and 26 minutes. So
yeah, it's basically to cover you when your power goes out.
Yeah, don't plan on taking this around school to get your your work done that day. In terms of CPU performance, though, it's impressive. Obviously, the most important part for a gaming laptop is going to be GPU performance. GTX 970M, very strong in that regard. Let's see. There it is. Pulling in Firestrike scores over 6,700 on GPU. on 3D Mark Firestrike. We were showing, Just Cause 2 running over 70 frames per second at 1080p. Metro 2033 running at over 50 frames per second.
It's pretty
1080p on very high settings. BioShock Infinite over 73 frames per second. I mean, there's a lot. The game testing on this was fine.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's performing as well as everything except the GTX 980M in terms of mobile space, which I guess kind of makes sense. And Steve actually came away fairly impressed with this, even though not the highest end GPU, pretty close. Has a spinning hard drive instead of an SSD, which is gonna.
That's got to be really, really
slow
painful.
things down.
If you're used to gaming on an SSD, that's just like that's got to smack you in the face and just be like, I am going slower.
I agree, but it is less than $1,500. It's like $1,460 or something like that. So it's hard to really complain about that considering you get everything else. You're getting the high end CPU, you're getting the high end GPU, you're getting a big display, 1080p, but still a large display. So we're looking forward to seeing how this pans out with the G-Sync add-on, or not add-on, but the G-Sync edition, the model that was recently announced.
Is that supposed to still have like a 970, or is that going to be like a 980?
Well, you can get this one with the 980M too.
Oh, okay.
Right. So I think the one we have in for review does use the 980M. It's a 75 hertz panel 980M, and this is a 60 hertz panel 970M. So,
all right, kind of makes sense.
Yep. We'll see how much more expensive the other one is. So
yeah, I'm curious to know that as well.
I think mobile gamers will probably want to wait.
I think the price. I think the price difference.
Two different G-Sync laptops here to test. So
I think the price difference from that is really them ASUS just trying to balance out demand. I would imagine
they did that with their laptops or their monitors.
Their monitors as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's fair. That's what they'll do. One last thing before we take our first break, I will mention is Josh posted a review on PCPro.com of with Dirt Rally's one of their lead game developers, Paul Coleman. It talks about a whole bunch of interesting stuff. I'm not going to dive into everything here, but they talk about the rendering engine technology they use. Josh goes into the fact that they might be cheating for controller users to make it so that they can keep up with people who have racing wheels.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff is addressed. What they do with GPU technology in terms of particle rendering in Dirt Rally. It's a pretty interesting read. Whether or not you are interested in rally games specifically, getting feedback and input from developers that, this is a PC specific title.
Right.
It's pretty interesting to see how they address some of that stuff. If
yeah,
you're
there's
interested,
good stuff in that interview.
Yeah, it really is. Now let's take a quick moment here and thank the first of today's podcast sponsors. That's right. What is the most important number in your life? Any guesses? Any guesses, anyone? It's not your age. That's good news. It's not your IQ. That's really good news. If you know what I mean. It has a huge impact on your finances, what you might pay for credit card interest, home loans, auto loans, and student debt. It is your credit score, and it's crucial to know what the score is and how it works. Understanding your credit is the first step toward building your financial future. The problem is some people get stuck paying to find out what their credit score actually is. That's why Credit Karma offers free credit scores, reports, and monitoring, along with handy financial tools to help you make sense of your credit. To download the free Credit Karma app, text TWiT, T-W-I-T, to 89800, and you can get started right away by doing that. You just send a text with the text TWiT to 89800. You'll get suggestions to help you manage and monitor your credit and be alerted when your credit score changes. Credit Karma has financial tools to help you calculate home affordability, debt repayment, simple loans, and amortization. They also have an archive of articles to help you better understand your credit and build your financial health. Find out your credit score today with Credit Karma. You can go to creditkarma.com to manage and monitor your credit for free with no credit card required. That's the important part here. You do not need a credit card to sign up and use this service. Or you can download their free app and be sure to text TWiT, T-W-I-T, that's just T-W-I-T, to 89800 to monitor your credit on the go. I think it's a really good idea. I think everybody should take advantage of this type of service from Credit Karma, and we thank them for their support of This Week in Computer Hardware. So be sure to check them out, guys. We do have more news to get to, obviously, as you would expect. Some things, I feel like we've talked about the AMD Radeon 300 series.
Yeah.
And it's leaks for probably 4 months.
There have been a lot of leaks.
And I feel like it's been like every week for 4 months.
Pretty much.
And it's probably not on accident.
I am beginning to think
AMD loves nothing more. The good news is, on June 16th, we had better know everything. And I don't have to worry about rumors anymore. We just get all the information out of the way.
I hope.
And then we can just, we don't have to talk about this.
And I also hope that the card kind of ships soon after that, whatever that announcement may be.
Yeah, well, so there was a leak coming out, came out this week of the Radeon 300 series pricing.
Yep.
And what's interesting about it, there's a couple of things. One is they list the R9 390X as an enhanced Hawaii XT. This is what basically I've been saying for the last 4 weeks or so, where I was before things basically got confirmed that something called AMD Fury X was a real thing, was that the 390X was going to be essentially the same as the 290X.
Right.
A little bit of modifications, and then whatever Fiji was going to be above that. So this this table pretty much shows that 390X is going to be an enhanced Hawaii XT. What that enhancement actually means, I don't know, other than it seems to be the default will have 8 gigs of memory instead of 4 gigs of memory. But notice that price. That price is $389.
Isn't that higher?
That's higher than what the 290X sells for today.
Okay.
So the enhancement, in addition to the memory, should provide some value. Otherwise, this pricing list doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And you got the 390 being Hawaii Pro, which is the 290. You can see that list down there, 380, 4 gig, 382 gigs. Those are based on Tonga. It looks like there could be a new one called the 380X that is based on Tonga XT, which was a previously unreleased GPU.
Right.
It's the same GPU as Tonga Pro, but bigger.
Okay.
Like it's basically Tonga Pro was XT cut down.
Oh, I get it.
But they had just never released it up until this, according to that. But there's no pricing listed for that. But you can see in that table, there's a gap between 329 and 235.
Right.
I don't know. Cut
somewhere
that in
the middle.
Go there.
Take the average.
Depends on where the price is. So this more or less, I think it's safe to assume that the 300 series is going to be a carbon copy of what the 390 will be. 300 will be the same as the 200.
Yeah.
Price changes, maybe some improvements here and there in terms of memory speed, capacity, maybe clock speeds.
Hopefully, because it was sounding earlier on that it was like just a straight carbon copy. With like the exception of the new card. Right. And at least now it looks like some more of the line is changing as they do that rebranding. And I didn't have a specific story to point to, but there was a image that somebody sent me on Twitter that showed an AMD.com page that listed, it was supposed to be a page for like resellers, like training, to learn about the AMD Radeon Fury X graphics card. And they slipped in like a box art for...
Yeah. So clearly the Fury X is going to be what Fiji is called.
Okay.
Whether there's Fury and then there's Fury X, like there's two derivatives or something like that, I don't know.
So that's that spiffy name, supposedly, that we were postulating that they were going to do.
It will be Fury.
Okay.
It will be Fury.
So not a number, a name.
Does it sound does Fury X sound a little bit like Titan X?
It wasn't really until you said that.
Okay.
You know.
Like,
I mean, the X thing, okay,
Fury,
I get it.
I would have had no problem with, but kind of adding the X to it at the end seems a little...
yeah, that is kind of following. Weird. Was there a Fury first? Yeah, there was a Fury first.
Yeah, like in 1997.
That's true. So
and it was Max. Fury Max.
Took them a while.
But it was MAXX Max.
Okay.
So maybe they could lay claim to the letter X first there. So let's see. What's today? Today's the 11th as we record this. Hopefully by the time I record another This Week in Computer Hardware show, I will be able to officially say what is going on with the R9 300 series and whatever Fury happens to be. Got some VR news. Start with the NVIDIA part.
It's patent to leak news.
Well, we have a collection of VR news in succession. We'll start with an NVIDIA patent that apparently finally came out. I feel like I've seen this image before. Like maybe it leaked out
in a cartoon from the 80s, maybe?
Yeah.
Like an X-Men cartoon.
This is why patents are so, like, this is a drawing and somebody's like, yeah. No, that they should grant them that patent.
It looks kind of like Cyclops.
It's a VR headset that has, 2 displays in it like VR headsets do. But I think what the unique part about this is that it has 6 cameras on it. A left look aside, right look aside, and then look down, left and right look down, and a left and right look front.
So is all this to figure out where it is?
I would assume so.
Or is it to show you?
It could be doing both. It may be helping them develop AR as opposed to VR, augmented reality, right? So you have a camera that's passing through. then you really have to make sure your latency is low if you're doing that.
Yeah, it really needs to be.
In the block diagram, so the interesting part about this is all coming from NVIDIA.
And we haven't seen a lot of this
doesn't
stuff.
Make a VR headset.
Right.
So this is either them preparing to build one or them just kind of like hedging their bets on stuff. Or...
I mean, you know, they got some smart people there. Maybe they just had some ideas in some VR stuff, and they're like, hey, we should patent this thing because it doesn't look like anyone else has done it this way, which is what the patent usually is, right?
Yeah, the block diagram shows it has its own CPU, memory, network adapter, and parallel processing subsystem, which you would assume would mean a GPU.
Yeah.
VR Focus, the source of the leak or the story, theorizes that it'd be based on Tegra X1, and that it was supposed to be revealed at GDC 3 months ago, and now they're wondering if it was going to show up at E3. I would almost say that is 100% not going to happen because there has been no push to like bring media out there, specifically on NVIDIA's.
Like they don't have a keynote and stuff.
They don't have a keynote. They don't have like, they haven't been like pushing to set up meetings even with people who are going to be there. So I find that highly unlikely. What is likely now is that you'll be able to buy an Oculus Rift. Is it still called that? Yeah. It's still officially called the Rift.
Yeah.
In Q1 of 2016.
Like a real
as
one?
a consumer product.
Oh.
They had their press conference today. Oculus did. They have a new logo as well, which I don't think it shows up in any of these pictures.
No,
but
it's just a big
they revealed the final headset, like what it looks like. And I think it looks pretty good, right? In terms of what it offers. I mean, it's very similar to what we've seen. It's just more refined, neater.
Right.
Let's see. It features 2 OLED screens. We've known that for a while. Tracking system. There's also now an external sensor that you can put on your desk, which replaces the webcam-like sensor from earlier Oculus headsets.
Right. I remember that one.
Right. So this one is, they just call it an external sensor, but they don't say it's a camera. So maybe it's just an IR sensor and it's reading the IR output.
It could be.
So maybe they don't want to call it a camera. I don't know. But clearly that's how the Oculus knows if you're leaning forward or leaning backward, like where you are in distance from the machine itself. Integrated a pair of headphones into the headset, which is cool. But I think they've made it so that you can take those off if you want to use your own headphones or
it looks like they're removable.
It's designed to fit better. Well, that's a plus. There's a dial to better adjust the distance between your eyes. Which is also important. But there is more. They also said they're going to bundle an Xbox One wireless controller with it.
Okay.
So they're going to bundle an Xbox One controller. And Phil Spencer, who's the head of Xbox at Microsoft, said on stage that the Rift will work seamlessly with Windows 10.
All right.
Okay, so that kind of makes sense. But even better news is that people will also be able to stream Xbox games like Halo to the Rift. Now you won't get the VR, like if you take an existing Xbox game and you stream it to the Rift, you don't get like the true VR. What you get essentially is like you're playing the game on a giant
just
screen.
Watching a big screen.
Like, yeah.
So how does it like? Because I know that the previous development kits and stuff has all been HDMI.
So my guess is, so you'll still hook it up to a PC.
Okay.
But one of the things they've announced for Windows 10 and Xbox is that the ability to stream Xbox games from your Xbox One
to the Windows 10
to a Windows PC. And people were often like, well, who's going to do that?
Right.
Well, now you have a reason to. You've got an Xbox One controller that comes with the Rift, and the Rift will be able to stream those games into it. So I'll be curious to see how that actually plays out. Is it a better experience for me to play Halo 5 sitting on my couch looking at my TV, or putting on a headset and sitting near my computer?
Well, if you don't have a couch and a TV, then I guess.
Well, sure.
Then the Rift is a no-brainer.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Oculus announced a $10 million prize to encourage indie game development. And one more thing, this is another post. Oculus founder Palmer Luckey introduced a brand new controller for the Rift, simply called Oculus Touch. It promises hand presence, manipulation, low mental load. Not exactly sure what that is.
Okay.
Communicative gestures, traditional inputs, and a lightweight feel. So you get 2 of them, one for each hand. They each have a sort of half moon shape, as you can kind of see in the.
What's the name of that thing on the sword? What's the name of that little?
The hilt.
The hilt. The little curvy thing that goes.
Yeah. So, yeah, it kind of looks like that. Yeah. Like that's the part where the device.
So you don't hurt your hand when you're swinging your hand around and run it into something, I guess. Maybe. Okay.
So I mean, clearly this is not a device that it's going to be ready day one with Oculus because they're shipping an Xbox One controller with it.
Yeah.
But if you look at the devices, like they have all these little LEDs are going to be IR LEDs again. So it's going to track the motion
that's
in and
what
out
it's for. Okay.
that way.
Huh.
Let's just see. Engadget just updated this post. They've heard a development kit version of the Oculus Touch will be available in Q1 2016. So the development kit will be in Q1.
Okay.
It won't be a consumer-ready version, but just an early edition for developers to work on. We seem to have we've seen this model before. This is not a surprise. Obviously, the reason is to give developers time to get used to the new controller, incorporate their games around it. Pre-order for the Touch will open the same time as the Rift. Interesting. Okay, so even though it's not going to be available, they're going to take pre-orders for it.
I think they're just trying to push to get like over that hump, right? Like this, for this stuff to really catch on. We're still climbing that hill, right? We're just not there yet. This is not anywhere near a ubiquitous kind of a thing yet.
They talked about it, and Palmer talked about it, like they didn't let any of the press or media pick it up and use it or anything yet. But the idea is that you're holding them, and as you maybe reach for something, you feel some kind of like haptic feedback. But I mean, it's still going to be a vibration.
Yeah, you can only do so much.
And is how much different is that than a controller, except that you have two separate things?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you could do rotation, so maybe you could push, like if it could be like you're holding a key, you put it into something, and then as you rotate it, it knows that you have rotated your hand. You get some haptic feedback on the transition between them. But at first glance, these don't look like just super revolutionary like the headset itself did.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to say. Hopefully maybe if I get out to E3, it looks less likely now, but maybe they're not going to let anybody touch them. I don't know. Maybe I'll just run up there anyway and
just grab
it and tell you how it feels with no software running. Sounds pretty useful.
Probably wouldn't work very well.
So Allyn, when we talked about the Intel SD750 series, we had a PCIe add-in card. Everybody understood that. And then we had this thing that looked like a 2.5-inch hard drive.
Right.
But it was bigger.
It was thicker. It was thicker.
And it had a weird connector on it.
It did.
That at the time was called
small form factor 8639.
Which rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, no.
It's really nice. So that was dumb.
It was, so and many people in the tech industry, including like people that I've received briefings from, and it kind of was like a running gag for a while there. Like, this name is really crappy. We wish someone would come up with a better one, but it just hasn't happened yet. Well, that apparently happened, and now it's just called U.2.
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 So in a similar naming theme to M.2.
Correct.
This is U.2.
Yes.
And what does U.2 define? It is the connector shape, the pinouts. Like, does U.2 define PCI Express? Does it require PCI Express?
It defines that entire connector, which is PCIe capable.
Okay.
Okay. Which, in other words, it has what you see there in the video is pins on one side of that connector, which kind of borrows some older form factors like serial ATA and SAS. There's a few extra pins in the middle there that are for SAS, but what's not in the picture on the stream right now is on the back side of that connector, there's another 40 pins. Right. And those additional 40 pins can carry PCI Express signaling over them. So that's what gives you your PCI Express by 4. So that version of the connector with all of those pins all together, that is U.2. Okay? If you just look at a regular SATA hard drive, that is not a U.2 connector, even though it looks kind of similar, right? It's that's just SATA, right? So it has to be the whole enchilada there, right? With all those pins. I think it's something like 60 pins total or almost 70 pins total on that connector. It's a whole bunch of connection there. But some of it's for power, some of it's for signaling, and some of it's for the actual, data that's going across the PCI Express 4 lanes worth that can go PCIe 3.0. So now it's just this one simple name, just U.2. What remains to be seen is just how much more that's going to catch on, right? You need motherboards that have a version of that connector for the other end of the cable, right? It's not going to look the same as what's on the device. It's gonna look a little bit different. It just really needs to kind of gain some more traction. I think this is going to be one of those things that we see more in the enterprise sector as far as gaining ground first there, and then maybe start to follow, come over into consumer devices. The reason it was so easy for Intel to make the SSD 750 in this other form factor is they were already doing that for their data center drive that consumer drive came from.
Right.
So they basically said, well, we're already making this in a regular PCIe card and this special data center style thing. Let's see if we can get the data center style connector to kind of catch on in the consumer space. Just from the standpoint of, not that everybody would need these, but like it's easier to fit just a 2.5-inch style SSD into a case, as opposed to, you have a small form factor, just like a micro ATX motherboard, right? You're lucky to get like a video card on it.
Right.
That doesn't leave another PCI Express slot to use one of their 750 series.
That's true.
The only way you're going to connect it is some other way, and that is that U.2 style connector is the other way.
Because M.2 wouldn't work because of the power consumption of 750 specifically.
There is not
We've heard
there is
people
not
request that, and I have to tell them that all the time.
Well, that's just a matter of you just can't physically fit that many flash dies onto a M.2 size PCB. Like that controller that's in the SSD 750 is an 18-channel controller. So theoretically, you would have, to get full performance out of it, you're going to need 18 chips. Right. And you just can't fit 18 chips onto a little M.2, a little gum stick.
Just got to try harder.
Yeah.
Just try a little bit harder. Okay. Well, I'm glad that confusion will be minimized.
Hopefully.
So, we've got a couple other things we're going to talk about first, including our first Z170 mini ITX motherboard and new racing wheels coming out from Logitech. Before we do that, let's take a quick second here to thank the second of today's podcast sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Braintree, code for easy online payments. If you're building a mobile app and searching for a simple payment solutions, check out Braintree. I'm enunciating clearly because maybe the name doesn't ring for many people, but it's Braintree, all one word. The Braintree V.0 SDK makes it easy to offer multiple mobile payment types. You can start accepting PayPal, Apple Pay, Bitcoin, Venmo, credit cards, and more, all with a single integration. You got simple, secure payments, code you get integrated in minutes. And for developers, they've got your back. You don't have to worry about taking days to integrate your payments. With Braintree, it's done in minutes. If you don't have time, you can give them a call and they'll handle the integration for you and walk you through the process. The Braintree code supports Android, iOS, and JavaScript clients. It has SDKs in 7 different languages: .NET, Node.js, Java, Perl, PHP, Python, and Ruby. It includes elegant code with clear documentation. That's always good. And 10 lines of in-app code is apparently what it takes to implement. So that's pretty impressive. Braintree gives you an easy way to accept multiple payment types with one integration, quick, knowledgeable developer support if you have any questions. And you can start accepting Apple Pay, PayPal, Bitcoin, Venmo, cards, whatever's next, all with a single integration. With the Braintree V.0 SDK, one small snippet of code, and you're all set up less than 10 minutes. To learn more, and for your first $50,000 in transactions fee-free, means you can accept $50,000 in transactions without paying a fee. You can go to braintreepayments.com/Twitch. That's braintreepayments.com/Twitch. And check them out. We thank them for their support of This Week in Computer Hardware. Let's jump back into a handful of more news stories. First, I mentioned a Z170 mini ITX board. Do you know what the Z170 chipset is, Alan?
Is that Skylake?
It is indeed.
Okay.
It is the next high-end chipset from Intel that will support Intel Skylake processors, which should be out maybe by the end of this year.
So is that like
probably CES next year?
Is that even more pins on the
it's
socket?
Actually less.
Okay, but it's still a different.
I think
socket.
it is indeed a different socket.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember. It's 1151. So what are we at now today? We're in 1150. Because we had 1156, 1155.
Yes.
And 1150, and now 1151.
It's like they just, have a little handful that they keep adding and taking away from just to oh, we have to make this one a different number.
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's more for compatibilities.
Right. Compatibility's
sake. So this is, we saw some Z170 motherboards kind of leak out at Computex. Not a big surprise. It tends to happen every year with whatever new chipset's coming up. But this is a mini ITX board from ASRock that looks really nice.
Yeah.
Processor socket looks identical. You still got support for 2 channels of DDR4, which is new for the consumer desktop. Haswell E supports DDR4, but Haswell did not. So Skylake will do DDR4. You've got 1 full-size PCI Express by 16 slot. You have 4 SATA ports plus a SATA Express, which gives you 6 total SATA if you don't want to use SATA Express.
Okay.
It's got integrated wireless connectivity. You can see there it's got the wires going up to the antenna at the top. You've got at least 8 USB 3.0 ports. I think, wait, what's it say? 6 USB 3.0 and 2 USB 3.1.
Okay.
So you've got USB 3.1 support. I can't tell here, but it doesn't look like it's Type-C connectors or anything.
They look normal.
You would still get this performance
like
benefits of USB 3.1. It is 802.11 AC pre-installed wireless connectivity there, so that's good.
Yeah. I don't see an M.2 port.
I don't see that either.
Yeah.
It's hard to do on a mini ITX motherboard.
That's true.
They're so small. I don't know if I saw it, maybe it was at CES this past year in January. I saw a motherboard that had the M.2 port on the back.
Wow, really?
Like, between where the standoffs would be, but I didn't, it wasn't installed in a system.
That's really kind of pushing it for space.
You think? I don't know.
I mean, I guess it would fit.
I don't know. We'd have to like do that measurement and see.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because in some cases it might, I think, for example, some Corsair cases I've seen have their standoff pegs like recessed a little bit.
Yeah.
Instead of, in some cases we'll have them raised a little bit. Like if you've seen like where they kind of bubble out where they screw in, or sometimes they've bubbled inward when they do that as well. So that would be hit or miss. This motherboard does not appear to have that capability, but an interesting idea for anybody who's looking to do that. So this is what you can expect to see with Skylake coming out.
Looks like a cool little motherboard.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't get a lot of hands-on time with ASRock motherboards, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
There's so many motherboard vendors out there, and like when ASUS launches a chipset, they just kind of send us everything. And so I'm used to picking through their lineup and using it on and off all the time. But ASRock does a lot of innovative, cool things. And this is an ASRock gaming branded mini ITX board, so you can expect see some interesting stuff. It does say several websites are reporting that this board has an Ultra M.2 port as well, which may be located on the underside of the board. So I don't know.
Yeah, we just don't have the picture to know for sure.
Tim said he looked for photos of that, but could not find any. So take that for what you will.
Yeah.
So there you go. Maybe I was almost right in guessing, because I think that's a good idea. I think maybe also interesting that some people would like is Cooler Master's idea of this kind of configurable case.
This is like Legos for a case. It really is.
A long time ago, Antec came out with a case called the Landboy Air. Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
It was bad.
Yes. I agree.
It looked bad.
Yeah.
Its fit and finish was not great. The idea was that, you could leave, it was like you said, Legos for cases. You could build some parts, leave some parts open. You could put fan filters on some parts. You could put hard drive cages here. You could put optical drive bays there instead. It didn't really work well. Never really took off.
Exactly.
Cooler Master is doing something. They're calling it the Make It Yours campaign with the Master Case and the Master Case Pro. If you look at these pictures, they purposely show exploded views of the case because they want you to know that all of this stuff is removable and adjustable.
I think the key is easily removable.
Well, yeah, you could always cut anything too. You could always Dremel any case.
Like this is not the picture of them assembling it before they send it to you. This is like trying to show the different things that you can just remove from the case, like to customize it to what you want it to be.
All of the external parts are modular and easily removed with a clip and a click. System implemented on the case is allowing you to not only change the configuration of your case, but also to modify them or design new ones if you have tools. They all follow a similar design to the Master Case 5 pictured above. 460 millimeter tall tower, deep enough to fit 260 millimeter radiators. It supports handles up top. You can look at the one at the bottom. It looks a little bit beefier as well. The Pro model forgoes the rear handle for an elevated mesh cover, good for installing a radiator, while the Maker 5 has a solid top and vented. So I like the idea, but I will say from this description and these pictures, it's hard for me to see the benefit of the modularity other than what they're showing me is like, yeah, you can put a fan there and yeah, you can take the top off.
Right.
But you can do that with anything.
You can do that with some other cases, yeah.
Not everything, but for a lot of them you can.
Yeah.
So I'll be curious to see when we get ours in, get a review, and see what capabilities you actually have.
I think it's one of those things you actually have to have your hands on with and see it in person to really know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, cases is one of those things that I think most people thought were dead a long time ago, but they're still moving along. Speaking of something that hasn't changed in forever, Allyn.
Racing wheels.
Yeah, you were looking up some of this stuff too. Josh wrote this story up for us.
Yeah.
Logitech just today announced the G29 and the G920 racing wheels right here before E3. The G27 is their current shipping racing wheel.
Yes.
And it came out when?
Like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
4 or 5 years ago.
It was like 2010.
Yeah.
Maybe it was 2011.
It's been out for a while.
It's been out for a long time. Now, to be honest, to be fair to them, racing wheels don't tend to change much.
There's not a lot to change. Like you haven't, you don't hear of rapid evolvements in the steering wheel of your car. And, along with that, you don't really hear of that much for this. But there were game consoles that you couldn't use a G27 with.
Right. PS4 and Xbox One have been released since then.
Yes.
Yep.
And the G27 works with neither of those.
Right.
So, kind of needed some updates. And people, I guess, as I was researching this before, just a couple months ago, like it didn't seem like Logitech even was going to do anything for a while. Like it just seemed like people were just saying, yeah, they're just done with it.
The way to go.
Like that was just it. Well, not the way to go, but like just that there wasn't going to be anything else. And, who knows? But obviously, there is. So there's two different models. There's a G29 and a G920. So the 29, I believe, is the PlayStation style, if I'm not mixing those up.
Go ahead.
So there is one that's PlayStation style. It comes with wheel and the pedals. It does not come with a shifter, which was previously included with G27. Just as a note, right? The G27 wheel used to be a wheel, a separate shifter module, and the pedals.
Right.
Like 3 items in the box.
Right.
Okay. So for these, it's just 2 items, probably because a lot of this stuff is moving towards paddle shifting anyway. It's just kind of more of a modern technology to not have a manual gearbox with an actual shifter. You just want to shift up, you click the paddle, right? I think that's where they're going with this. There is still a shifter available for these. It's an add-on, but the base parts for each of these, one model is for PS4, another model is for Xbox One. Each one of them is $400.
Yeah.
Which kind of bugs me.
Why is that?
Because looking through their press release and everything, it looks like, yes, there's a racing wheel. One model has PlayStation-specific kind of buttons added to it. The other model has Xbox-specific kind of buttons added to it.
Sure.
Fair enough. But
the PlayStation one has lights on the top, too.
It also has lights on the top. But when you compare that to the G27, like all the stuff seems the same as far as the specs. Like it's 2 motors inside the base for the wheel to help give you the force feedback.
Right.
Well, the old model had 2 motors. Helical gears. The old model had helical gears. Pedals are made out of steel. The old model had pedals made out of steel. Huh, okay. So it's kind of like they just kind of, it looks, at least on paper, that they just refreshed. You wouldn't know if the wheels actually perform better until people have actually, tried them.
True.
I would imagine behind the scenes over 5 years, they've probably come up with something.
Yeah.
I just wish there was more of that information in the initial press release.
Yeah. Right. I think that's fair to ask.
Yeah. Especially since you can get the G27 for like $250.
Right.
And if it's the same except for some buttons, that's expensive buttons.
I think that's fair to ask. When we had Logitech here before, they wouldn't tell us
because it wasn't
out yet. They wouldn't tell us like what the actual differences are. Now I think it's a fair thing to go to them and say, hey, now that it's out, tell us what the actual differences are. Like how do you get that price difference? It can't just be because it's for a new console.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get one or both of these in to mess around with as well.
And both models should work on a PC.
Correct.
So you're not just stuck with, I bought this for an Xbox One.
Yeah, even though the G29 has the PlayStation logo on it, it will still work on a PC. And then the G920 just has the Logitech G logo on the middle of it. But it does have an Xbox button.
That's true.
Like a specific Xbox button. But they will also work on the PC. So they're launching in conjunction with E3. They'll be showing them at E3 and to get there. Because there has been a kind of a revival with Project Cars. And kind of a revitalization of racing games again. We talked about the interview with the Dirt Rally developer that Josh did. So I'm eager to try it. I get bored with racing games pretty quick, but I think a lot of that might have to do with using a controller as input.
Yeah, you really need to use a proper wheel. if you want the right feel for.
All right. Our final story of the week, LG announces the 27MU67B. I like LG's model numbers because they almost make sense. Like the first two, that's the size of the monitor. The middle two letters indicate the series. After that, that's kind of like the SKU of that series. Okay. I don't know. The B in this case, I don't have an answer for. But this is a 27-inch 4K IPS with AMD FreeSync support. So it's an IPS 4K 60 hertz screen.
Okay.
With 4K AMD FreeSync, which is their variable refresh technology.
Okay. Full color gamut.
Full color gamut.
Right. 99%.
99% SRG, or is it sRGB?
sRGB, yes.
And it's going to have an MSRP of just $599.
Okay.
Which is, those are all impressive specifications, actually. No list on actual release date, just listed as coming soon. But it does have, where does it say here?
It's good to see FreeSync panel, like more IPS FreeSync coming out.
IPS FreeSync, IPS 4K, you know, at low cost. This is about the prices you would buy a 4K TN panel not too long ago.
Right.
Maybe even still today, actually.
Yeah.
So that's good. We'll be curious to see, you know, the downside to this for a FreeSync monitor is that it has a 60 hertz maximum refresh.
Yes.
So when you go above that, you will tear or judder, depending on, you know, whether or not you decide to turn vertical sync on or off above that. And then the most important thing for FreeSync monitors is what that bottom refresh rate is.
Yes.
So,
and we haven't really seen any LG 4K like IPS glass with a FreeSync range attached to it, so we don't really know.
I haven't really seen any FreeSync monitor advertising its bottom level.
Well, they usually have like a range, right? I mean, they usually say.
I think that's something you have to like pull out of them.
Okay.
But for example, like if this is 30, that's okay.
Yeah, 30 is okay.
The 30 is pretty good.
If
the
it's
problem
40,
is at a 4K resolution, if you actually game at 4K,
you might
there
hit
may be
30.
instances where you're hitting 30.
That's true.
Because of the hardware requirements for it. But on the, you know, if it's like 40, if the minimum refresh rate, variable refresh rate is like 40.
That only gives you a 20 hertz window.
That's a very narrow window for where variable refresh works. Because with the first FreeSync monitor we had went 48 to 75.
Yeah.
And that was already small.
Yep.
So they need to make sure that this is as wide a range as you can get, or AMD needs to figure out how to do the frame doubling trick in software that NVIDIA does in hardware on desktop monitors today.
If there's anybody that's going to be able to get a specific piece of glass that's in a panel to be able to go to a low or any kind of a range, it's probably LG, right? Because
they own IPS.
Yeah, they own IPS.
They built IPS.
They own all the technology associated with that.
True.
They're making the panel. So if the whole display is coming from them, you know, they won't be able to really use the excuse, well, the
panel manufacturer.
Yeah, the other guy didn't know how to do this. No, it's all them, right? So if someone's going to figure it out, I hope it's them.
Doesn't mean they won't do it, because Samsung does that all the time when they're talking about phones to chips to licensing.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
So it doesn't necessarily mean they'll do that. That's going to round up the show for us tonight, guys. I really appreciate everybody stopping by. If this is your first episode of This Week in Computer Hardware, please go to twit.tv/TWiCH, TWiCH. And you can find all of our back episodes there. You can subscribe through iTunes or any podcatcher through RSS for audio versions or video versions. If you have emails for us and questions and ideas, send them to twitch@twit.tv, TWiCH@twit.tv. And maybe next week we'll have, I really can't promise this, but we might have both me and Patrick on the same show again.
I hope.
Maybe we're the same person. And that's why we don't do it anymore.
Okay.
We'll see. But thanks for filling in.
Yeah.
Understudy Allyn, representing the Patrick Norton side of This Week in Computer Hardware. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Allyn Malventano.
Thanks.